In 2009, Kepler telescope was launched to search for Earth-like planets when the world's population had reached 6.76 billion. In 2153, a Paleo-17 probe landed on planet Tanis. At the time, the world population had already reached 24.34 billion, and food and water shortages had become commonplace. In 2174, the battle for Earth's limited resources reaches its boiling point. In a desperate attempt to save humanity, spacecraft Elysium is launched. The movie begins with a visual of a giant spaceship gliding through space. Inside the ship, the crew receives a decoded message informing them they are the only ones left of humanity and wishing them a blessed journey. The scene changes and we are taken to a small cylindrical pod where a man gasps awake and struggles to breathe. Detaching himself from where he was spent, he falls to the ground and tries to calm himself down. Shaking from the cold, the man drags out the tubes inside his skin that are keeping him alive. Getting up and finding a light, he looks at the pod he was in and sees the man Bauer written on it. Looking around, he sees a locker with his name on it and finds himself something to wear. Once he is ready, he looks around and finds another pod similar to his, but is unable to open it. Giving up on the attempt, Bauer tries to shave his face when suddenly the pod he was trying to open activates itself, releasing the inhabitant inside. Rushing toward the man, he addresses him as Lieutenant Peyton, telling him that he has been in extended hypersleep. Bauer explains that he doesn't know where they are, and that he hasn't seen anyone else aboard the ship. Bauer also tells Pathon that he has been awake for an hour, but can still not remember anything. After Pathon gears up, the two men head over to the locked door connected to the bridge and notice that someone has desperately tried to get out from the scratches on the door. Python then attempts to start the machines, but nothing seems to work. Remembering a manual activator, Python can access a bit of power and send out a message to the rest of the ship through the intercom. While they wait for a response, they feel the ship shake from what seems like power surges. Deciding that they need to get out of there, Python lifts Bauer into the ventilation shafts so he can find a way out. Squeezing through the tight opening, Bauer updates Pathon on the reactor, but is unable to remember how he had come across this knowledge, making Pathon deduce that Bauer was their electrical engineer. After crawling through the shafts for a while, Bauer begins to feel claustrophobic, yelling at Pathon that he can't breathe. Understanding the man's state, Peyton calms him down, encouraging him through his mission. Feeling slightly better, Bauer pushes through but accidentally falls through an opening where he sees the decomposed body of another colleague, his name tag reading Cooper. Picking himself up, he informs Peyton about what he has found, telling him about their dead colleague. He then forcefully opens the door in front of him and takes a look around the dark corridor. While walking past the bridge, Bauer and Peyton lose communication signals and are unable to exchange information. Suddenly, Bauer begins to hear banging and shines his flashlight toward the direction the noise is coming from. In the direction where the light is reflected, Bauer sees a woman and chases her down the corridor, screaming for her to stop. When he gets closer to the standing person, Bauer is shocked to see that it is a disemboweled hanging man. While he is trying to make sense of what he is seeing, the girl he has been chasing pops out of nowhere and throws him to the ground. Holding a knife to his neck, she threatens him not to move while she takes items from his pockets. Suddenly, they hear something moving above, making the girl flee in fear, leaving Bauer all alone. Realizing that something dangerous was heading toward him, Bauer runs down the corridor and hides in an open cabin, fearfully hearing the sounds of footsteps coming his way. After seeing something pass by, Bauer slowly takes a peek outside the door and sees a mutated humanoid creature tracking him. Hiding in one of the cabinets, Bauer holds his breath as the creature enters the cabin and looks around. Although he is almost caught by the mutant, Bauer manages to stay hidden and watches as the creature drags Cooper's rotted body away. Once he makes sure he's alone, Bauer contacts Peyton and informs him about what is going on. When he asks if they had any chance of being rescued, Peyton explains that they were not on an ordinary ship, he shouldn't expect aid. Suddenly, Bauer gets flashbacks of when he was just a child, and the world was informed about the discovery of a new planet that could sustain life. He remembered that the Elysium was a one-way ticket to this new planet. Bauer also remembers that he had a wife and that thousands of other passengers came aboard the ship. Hoping to find her amongst the others, Bauer informs Peyton that he is heading over to the area. Peyton warns him not to do that because they had no idea where they were located. Instead, he urges him to help him restart the ship's systems. Hearing Peyton's advice, Bauer finds a non-lethal weapon in one of the cabinets and grabs it, hoping it will help him against the mutants. Peyton leads him through the ship, and Bauer goes through the complicated corridors until he suddenly sees something passing by. Halting his run, he hides in a corner and begins to wait for the shadow to reveal itself. When he doesn't hear or see anything, Bauer remembers a space symptom known as Pandorum and asks Peyton about it. Disturbed by hearing the name, Peyton tells him about an officer who had gone crazy and sent thousands to their death by ejecting them from their pods while they were still in hypersleep after developing the disease. Getting the disturbing incident out is his head, Bauer climbs up a lander toward the direction Peyton was leading him, unaware that he was being followed by someone. As he moves forward, he sees another body that has been hung on the roof and realizes that it has been booby-trapped. When Bauer gets close to take a look at the body, the man opens his eyes and begins to scream. Calming him down, Bauer gets the man down and finds out the man's name is Shepard. When Shepard realizes that Bauer isn't from the rescue team, he quickly gets up from the floor and begins to cover himself up with oil to mask his scent. When Bauer tries to order the man to tell him what is going on, Shepard explains that there is no longer a chain of command and warns him to stay hidden from the creatures. Suddenly, the corridors begin to echo from the growls of the creatures arriving, forcing the two men to run. Although Bauer manages to make a close escape, Shepard is caught by the cannibalistic mutants and killed. Bauer is rescued by a stranger who does not speak English just before the creatures can drag him toward them. Realizing the stranger belonged to the agriculture faction from the stamp on his hand, Bauer asks the man to stay put while he tries to resolve the reactor issue. Despite Bauer asking him to stay put, the stranger known as Man follows him in secret and saves him from another attack launched by the woman who had stolen from him earlier. When she realizes that Bauer is from the flight crew, she tells him and Man that they are taking the wrong direction to the reactor, taking them to the lab that has been housing millions of species. Nadia explains that she had woken up months ago and tells them she was part of the genetic team chosen to help populate the new world. Back in the control room, Peyton has an episode and wakes up on the floor with his nose bleeding. After hearing noises coming from all over the place, Peyton's paranoia kicks in as he assumes the creatures have come for him as well, but realizes it is coming from the webbed tubes where a man is trying to crawl out. Pulling him out, Peyton speaks to the shaking man, who reveals his name is Gallo. In a different part of the ship, Nadia takes Bauer and Man to a large hypersleep chamber where most of the pods are empty. While walking around the chamber, Bauer and Nadia fall into the lower levels filled with human remains. Slowly climbing out, Bauer looks around the place only to be startled by one of the mutant creatures who launches at him. Bauer, Man, and Nadia attempt to fight the creature, but the mutant is too strong for them to handle. After a long fight, the humans can take down the mutant creature, unaware that dozens of them had gathered to attack them. As soon as they see the others, Bauer and his friends begin to run, escaping as one of the pods randomly opens and gives the creatures distraction. After escaping the large hypersleep chamber, they find themselves inside a locked room where they meet an erratic man who claims to be a cook called Leland. After he serves them some soup to eat, Bauer and Nadia begin to discuss what the creatures hunting them were, and Nadia explains her theory that it was the chemical given to their bodies that was supposed to help them adapt to the new planet. Hearing their conversation, Leland interjects, telling them that he knows what happened. Launching into telling his story, he explains that one of the officers by the name of Gallo had been experiencing symptoms of Pandora when the crew received news that Earth was destroyed. The information drives Gallo over the edge, making him murder his two superior officers. He then began waking up passengers, teaching his ideologies, and creating a violent society. But after a while, Gallo grew tired of everything and went back to hypersleep. Suddenly, the area begins to fill with gas, causing Bauer and the others to lose consciousness. When he wakes up, Bauer finds himself strung upside down and begins to flail around, unaware of what is going to happen, until Nadia points out that Leland is going to eat them. Telling him that they could be saved if they restart the reactor, Bauer manages to convince Leland to let them go and assist them in the process. Meanwhile, conversing with Gallo in the control center, Peyton has started to feel like he is going crazy, Gallo's stories making him falter in his resolve. Suddenly, Peyton hears Gallo's voice come through the intercom, telling him where he is and asking for further directions to get to the reactor. Once they get the information, Bauer and the others head into the tunnels when they suddenly run into a young creature, making them realize the monsters are breeding. Pushing forward, Bauer's group finally makes it to the reactor and is shocked to see hundreds of the creators sleeping at the bottom. Having no other choice, Bauer climbs down and crawls his way through the reactor, careful not to wake any of them up. When Leland accidentally drops his flashlight, the cluster of monsters wakes up and begins to come after them. Just as they are about to reach them, Bauer activates the reactor, killing most of them. During the escape, Mann is killed when he hesitates to murder a young one. In the control center, Gallo becomes more erratic, forcing Peyton to attempt to sedate him. Refusing to let that happen, Gallo fights back and manages to inject Peyton instead. Suddenly, it is revealed that Peyton and Gallo are the same person who had murdered his officers and put the entire ship into chaos. Realizing who he is, Gallo opens the door of the bridge with ease and awaits Bauer's return. Although Leland makes it to the control center first, he is killed by the now conscious Gallo. Soon after, Bauer and Nadia arrive, closely followed by the frightening creatures. Closing the door behind them, Bauer and Nadia search for Peyton and find him sitting on an officer chair on the bridge. Pointing his gun at Peyton, Bauer asks him where they were, and Peyton opens the shields to reveal a starless space, telling them that they're all doomed. The situation begins to lead Bauer further into the symptoms of Pandorum, making Peyton attempt to take advantage of his mental health. Suddenly, Nadia notices bioluminescent life forms floating around, and they realize they have already landed on the new planet hundreds of years ago. Peyton refuses to let civilization restart, telling Bauer and Nadia that they must continue in their savage ways. The psychosis taking hold of him, Bauer accidentally shoots the glass separating them from the water, assuming that it was one of the creatures. Just as water begins to flood in, Bauer and Nadia make their escape into the pods, while Peyton and the monsters drown. The pod resurfaces and begins to float on the surface of the ocean, ejecting the door and allowing Bauer and Nadia to breathe. As they gasp for breath, they see thousands of other pods being ejected from the ship and coming out to the surface. Realizing that humanity had been saved, Bauer and Nadia smile at each other, looking at the beautiful scenery of their new planet. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.